You know, we all like to think we can spot a liar, right? But what if the most convincing imposters out there aren't really good actors at all? What if they're just exploiting a built-in flaw in our own minds? Well, today, we're going to dissect the anatomy of an imposter and show you the psychological backdoors they use to walk right into our lives. Okay, just think about this for a second. You're strapped into a metal tube, miles up in the sky. You have literally placed your life in the hands of a complete stranger up in the cockpit. So, why do you do it? Did you check his flight logs? Did you verify his credentials with the airline? No, of course not. So what are you actually trusting? In that, right there, is the secret. You're not trusting the person's skill or their flight hours. You're trusting the symbols. You know, the uniform with the gold stripes, the official-looking hat with the logo. This is the exact psychological backdoor that social engineers use to walk right into our lives, completely unchallenged. So let's dig into the wiring behind all this. Why are we so vulnerable to something as simple as a costume? Well, it turns out this isn't some kind of personal weakness. It's actually a deeply ingrained feature of our human software. Yep, psychologists actually have a name for this little glitch. It's called authority bias. It's our brain's automatic shortcut to just defer to someone who looks like they're in charge. We basically assume their opinions are more valid, and their commands must be followed, often without asking a single question. And this is where it gets really interesting. On one hand, you've got the academics calling it authority bias. But on the other hand, in the underworld where this is weaponized every single day, it has a much more fitting name, the confidence game. And the goal is simple. Gain your confidence, and you will give them anything they want. And listen, this is not a modern flaw. It's an ancient survival mechanism. For millions of years, humans have lived in hierarchies. Obeying the alpha, the leader of the tribe, meant survival. I mean, the ones who stopped to question the alpha's command to run, well, let's just say they got eaten. So evolution built this shortcut right into our brains. See a uniform, a badge, a lab coat, and the rational, questioning part of our mind just kind of takes a backseat. And you know, maybe no one in history has hacked this reflex better than Frank Abagnale Jr. You might know his story from the movie Catch Me If You Can, but the reality is even more unbelievable. He is the ultimate case study in weaponizing the power of the costume. I mean, just look at this resume. As a teenager, a high school runaway with no money and zero connections, Abagnale successfully pretended to be an airline pilot, then a doctor, and a lawyer. And as if that wasn't enough, he also became one of the most successful check forgers in history. How on earth did he pull this off? Well, his very first con started with a simple observation. Pilots walk through airports like they own the place. So he just decided to become one. He didn't go to flight school. He went straight to a uniform supplier. He flat out lied, claiming to be a Pan Am co-pilot who'd lost his uniform. And he just projected this perfect air of annoyed entitlement. The clerk never even thought to question it. And that became his first and most important rule. And the results? They were staggering. With a fake ID and that crisp uniform, Abagnale deadheaded, that's the lingo for hitching free rides in the cockpit's jump seat, for 2 whole years. He flew over 1 million miles. It's the perfect illustration of just how powerful that costume was. He looked the part, so the system just handed him the keys to the kingdom. So you're probably wondering what happened when real pilots started talking shop. Well, Abagnale had this genius little social engineering trick. He'd simply say he was just on the equipment, which is a piece of airline jargon that means he wasn't certified to fly that specific plane. It was a brilliant excuse. It sounded technical, it immediately ended the conversation, and his uniform made it totally believable. He used the same kind of logic when he was in a hospital. Posing as a resident supervisor, he never had to make a single medical decision. Anytime a crisis happened, he'd just turn to an eager intern and ask, "What do you think, doctor?" The intern would give the answer, and Abagnale would just nod sagely and say, "I agree. Proceed." He literally used their own hierarchy against them. Okay, so we've seen what he did, and it is absolutely incredible. But the much more important question is, why did it all work? How did he fool so many smart, trained professionals day in and day out? The answer reveals another critical flaw in our mental software. Abagnale himself gives us the key. He said, and I quote, "It was not that I was brilliant. It was that people were not looking."
You see, his success came from a simple fact. Once our brain slaps a label on someone, we stop paying attention to the details. We start to see what we expect to see. This is a textbook case of something called confirmation bias. The moment Abagnale's uniform convinced people he was a pilot, their brains just worked overtime to confirm that belief. Any red flags, like his age or his lack of technical knowledge, were just ignored or explained away. Our minds desperately want to be right, even if it means ignoring reality staring us right in the face.
So, the big question is, how do we defend against this? How do we override our brain's natural autopilot? Well, it all comes down to having a simple, conscious verification protocol. Just 3 little steps to help you see the person, not the costume. Think of these 3 steps as your new mental firewall. They're simple, they're easy to remember, and they're specifically designed to force your rational brain to switch back on. So, let's break them down. First up, always remember that a uniform proves absolutely nothing. It's just clothes. So if someone shows up at your door claiming to be from the utility company, don't just glance at their vest. Actually check their ID. Then, and this part is absolutely crucial, do a secondary check. Don't call the number on their business card. Find the company's official number online yourself and call to verify who they are. See, imposters rely on our social conditioning, our deep desire not to be difficult or impolite. You have to be willing to feel a little awkward. It's okay to be a little rude to stay safe. A legitimate professional will totally understand. A con artist won't. Second, you want to perform a competence check. Don't ask vague questions. Ask something specific and technical that a real expert should be able to answer easily. A true professional will probably be happy to talk about their work, but an imposter? They'll deflect, just like Abagnale did, or they'll get defensive and angry. And you have to remember this. Anger is the defense mechanism of the fraud. And third, apply the out-of-context test. This is a really simple mental exercise. See, an imposter's environment, the hospital, the airport, the fancy office, it does a lot of the heavy lifting for them. So in your mind, just strip all of that away. Picture the person you're talking to sitting in a coffee shop in jeans and a t-shirt. Without the uniform in the official setting, do they still seem credible? This forces you to look at the human, not the background props. Now, as a final twist, Frank Abagnale eventually used his skills to work for the FBI, catching other criminals. But while he changed sides, the game itself has completely evolved. The core psychological principles we've been talking about are timeless, but the tools of the trade have changed dramatically. The modern social engineer doesn't need to buy a pilot's uniform anymore. No. Today, they can use artificial intelligence to clone your mom's voice from a short audio clip and then call you asking for money. The costume is no longer physical, it's digital. It's a cloned voice, a deep-faked video, a perfectly crafted phishing email. And this leaves us with the critical question for our time. We've just spent all this time learning how to see past a fake uniform. But what happens when the costume isn't something you see, but something you hear? How do we adapt when the very voices of the people we love and trust can be perfectly faked? The confidence game has gone digital, and believe me, the stakes have never been higher.